one of my go-to, like as far as consuming something, depends on the time of the day, but I turn to YouTube, maybe not as like the default, but it's definitely one of my first go-tos. Um, and it depends on what kind of things I'm trying to consume, right? Like if I'm trying to follow um, what's new in like the movie sphere, if I want to know, okay, what kind of movies are coming out, then I'll watch like a movie reviewer or a movie critic, someone talking about like what a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that you'll see. Um, it's not for everyone, and but those are typically a lot longer. You can't just do that in a few minutes. Like if I'm doing that, I may as well watch trailers, and I really don't actually like watching trailers all that much because I feel like they give me too much. Um, but it's definitely like having the idea of having an entire thing done in 12 minutes, let's say, and then you synthesize that down to a minute and then again down to half a minute. It's definitely not something that is for my particular type of liking. Like all the Vine videos, or now it's TikTok, IG Live, right? Like,
Thanks to this device, all these other
yeah,
avenues just opened because
yeah,
everyone has it
exactly.
in their pocket. Everyone's a filmmaker. But do you think all this content being out there, and there's a lot of content, there's content
Yeah.
being uploaded literally every second by thousands of people. Do you think it affects indie filmmakers and independent films because there's just so much option? And just within content, there's a lot of variety. Let's say there are cooking shows, there's short
Mm-hmm.
films, there are people just talking, there are people fighting for no reason at times, and people also enjoy watching that.
I mean, you're always going to be competing with something else, right? Like and I think it depends on the demographic that you're trying to capture. There's going to be audiences maybe skewing on the younger side of things that they're not likely to watch, let's say, a documentary, or they're not likely to watch even sports. You don't think that like filmmakers compete with sports, but they do, because it's eyeballs, right? Like you're trying to get the attention, you're trying to keep their attention. Something like TikTok or whatever, IG Live, Instagram, um, it's you're not really targeting the same demographics. So to answer your question, is this new kind of short form content taking away from indie films? I don't think so. Maybe I'm being a little bit hopeful in that sense, but I think the people that are watching these short form uh, TikTok videos or YouTube, even YouTube videos are, in like the 5 minute range. For me, 5 minutes is still pretty short. Um, they're not going to be, they're more than likely not going to watch indie films, documentaries, or things that are maybe a little bit more dense in terms of like substance. They're obviously trying to just consume and move on to the next. It's very instant gratification. I think it says a lot about our current like society, that everything, because of the phone, because of just how fast we can consume things, that you watch one YouTube video and then you move on to the next, and you don't have to put any thought into it, and there's no, you don't walk away with it like you did with the movie you referred to earlier, of like thinking about it and reflecting for the next couple of days. Whereas someone like me, an audience similar to my liking, would want to sit down with the movie, maybe think about like how it ended, think about what that meant, think, is there like a part of the movie that I missed, or is there something, that's why I was saying like it's so important to have a good script, because if there's something that was just slightly mentioned, or something that you see in the background, that could completely change the viewing experience, right? Like you can go back and rewatch it and when you rewatch it again, you see something that just changes the entire flow of the story in the
Because
same movie.
independent films and content, online content,
Mhm.
lives in the same online space. Independent films don't really go to the theater. And especially now in the
Yeah.
COVID world, everything is in the online space. Even big budget films are
Mhm.
going on Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, and your other
Yeah.
platforms. So
HBO.
literally everything is in the same space. And I think YouTube being one of the biggest, it is the biggest platform. That's where
It's
everything also
huge.
lives. You
Yeah.
have a lot of independent films which are on YouTube. For the smaller independent filmmakers, they don't even know how to release their films on platforms. I, like initially when I started, I didn't know as well. It required a little bit of a research and work to get on the bigger platforms.
Mhm.
But there's a platform like YouTube where there are films, small films, big films. There's YouTube movies as well where you can watch
Yeah.
big blockbusters for free.
Yep.
And on the side, like on the sidebar, the suggestion bar, the first suggestion is going to be, if you're watching a film, is obviously going to be a film. The rest is going to
Yeah.
pick up from your history. And if there's a YouTuber you like particularly, that YouTuber is also there, then maybe an independent film, a short film, a music video, a cooking show, or
Yeah.
something else is going to be there. So you have so many choices there. And the thing here is, like you mentioned about the writing, uh, I know a lot of content creators, they write their scripts. And honestly speaking, I think a lot of content creators are really good as well with writing their
Mhm.
scripts. I know for the filmmakers that do content creation as well, some of them, I really enjoy watching their shows.
Mhm.
Um, so everyone being in the same space, with one having this reputation where the budgets are low, they are competing with the big ones, and they're also competing with the little ones, are the independent films.
Yeah.
Then do you think people tend to skip them when everything is in the same space?
I think so. Like even like if you think of just how fast things move, right? Like the suggestion bar in YouTube, for example, or let's say you're binging a show on Netflix or whatever streaming service you're watching at the time. If you happen to miss part of it and you don't pause it, and someone like me, I'll rewind it. I want to make sure that I get all of it. But there are for sure different types of audiences, right? There's audiences. I know people, for example, that will binge watch something and they'll actually adjust the frame
Mhm.
rate. So they'll adjust it to go 1.25 so they can go through it quicker. Not something I would do necessarily, but that's an option. You know, it's not an option, maybe not on every platform, but if you can find on the platform that you prefer, you can make it happen. I might do that with a podcast because it's not like I'm missing any the visuals and it's not necessarily required. I just need to hear it and make sure that I understood it. But I would never do that with like a TV show. Whereas there's people that will do that with the TV show and they don't mind if they miss like a few scenes or whatever, and they'll just keep going as if it's not a big deal. Those are the audiences. I don't particularly include myself in that type of audience because, like I said, I think if they wrote it and they shot it, they want me to hear it. And if
Mhm.
they want me to hear it, it's because it has something to do with the big the big picture story. Where I get frustrated is when I'm paying that much attention to something and the screenwriters or the director is not even as devoted to the story as I am, and they're just throwing things in there and it doesn't have any impact. So I'm like, why am I paying more attention to your piece of work than you did? If you're just willing to throw in things that don't make a difference, why should I even be watching? Um, there's cases where there's like I'm subscribed to a YouTube channel and I don't even want to watch their new video because I haven't seen like the last two releases from a week ago or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm really like anal about that. I'll go back and I'll be like, did I watch this video? Let me make sure I actually watched it. Or, oh, I'm not watching the new one, even though it just ended up on my home screen. I'll go back into their channel and make sure that I've watched the most recent ones. Depends obviously on the YouTube video. If it's like a cooking channel, maybe it's not relevant. But typically the things that I watch function in a sequence, or I know that they might refer to something in their last video. And if I hadn't seen it already, then I don't want it to be spoiled. But definitely that is not it's not the typical audience, right? Like maybe the typical audience or the younger audiences now, especially,
Mhm.
are more likely to just skip things. They're more likely to just be like, just get to the end of it. Whereas I'm like, the the whole journey is the meat of the story. The ending is just the reward.
I did a little bit of research in 2018, and I'm just telling you old data. I don't know how relevant it is today,
Mm-hmm.
but most this is obvious that most of the younger generation, people between the age of 16 to 34, pretty much everyone
Wow.
uses social media.
Yeah, we're still in that age frame, which is pretty crazy.
We're in that age frame.
Yeah,
So I didn't want to reveal my age here, but still,
I mean,
but people know. That's okay.
people now know you're 19 years old. Now they know.
Yeah, so, okay. I'm 16. I'm underage.
Fine,
Kidding.
fine.
I know, but most of these
Truth comes
people,
to light.
they're more aware than anyone that's 40 plus. They're more aware with what's going on in the pop culture and social media.
Yeah.
And for independent filmmaking, social media is the biggest marketing tool.
Mhm.
YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all these other platforms. Uh, but this is also the age group which consumes most content and
Yeah.
consumes all sorts of content. So these are your main audience.
Mhm.
And if you're not entertaining them, because this was in that article I read, their attention span is literally 30 seconds. If they're not entertained in 30 seconds, it's gone. It's finished. They're gonna leave.
Yeah.
They're gonna move on to the next. And that's something that concerns me a lot personally, because my films are all slow, very little dialogue. Uh, one take, one shot, one walk is 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a little concerning. Or people that make films like me, social films, which are about
Mhm.
social issues or some serious issues.
Yeah, they're not like satire
No,
comedies,
I'd love to make a comedy. I think it's the toughest genre in the
It's
world.
the hardest thing to
Very
write.
difficult.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous.
Something that's funny for me may not be funny for you. And the people that
Exactly. And
write
it's all about
comedy,
pacing and
yeah,
timing. It could be a funny joke on paper, but it won't translate if you don't have the right actor.
exactly. And the bonding between the actors need to
Yeah.
really work together.
Yeah.
So I'd love to make one. I just don't know when. I think it's really tough.
It's definitely one of the hardest. I think, to give you some hope,
Mhm.
recently, I think towards like the end of 2019, there was a streaming service released called Quibi. You've probably heard of it.
I've heard.
It's like, the concept itself is pretty dumb when you really like break it down. What it means, they wanted it to mean, is it's QUIBI. The short form is it's a short form of quick bite, which even that doesn't really tell you what it is. So it's Quibi, right? This streaming service that is not available, or it's not available anymore because they didn't succeed. They completely failed. But it wasn't available on smart TVs. It wasn't. It was meant for tablets and phones. It was something where you would watch a 5 minute episode of a TV show, or a 5 minute like clip of a movie, where it was literally like you would have to watch whatever it is, like 35-minute portions of a movie to watch a whole movie. And their entire like idea of the platform was that you would watch it in between like mundane moments, like if you're waiting for the bus, you're watching a 5-minute TV show, and then you get on the bus and you watch another 5 minutes. You're doing it when you're like in a mundane situation, waiting in line at the DMV or whatever the equivalent is in your jurisdiction. It's just the fact that it didn't work, and it had like a lot of A-list, it had like a lot of like known producers, actors, directors attached to projects on that platform, and it still didn't work for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because that's not how people consume. Like you can still consume like TikTok or whatever, YouTube videos when you're waiting in line at the grocery store, maybe, I guess, but you're not going to watch a movie split up in 5 increments at a time. It's just, it doesn't work. And that's what they really were trying to force it. And their whole like excuse was, oh, because of COVID, it didn't work. But really, COVID meant people were more than likely going to be at home than, traveling or out with friends or waiting in an elevator, watching this short form. So it should have worked. If anything, it should have worked because of COVID, and it still didn't work. So to say that like something like TikTok or IG Live is maybe taking away from indie film producers, I think is not necessarily exactly the case. And I think something like this shows you that even if you were to adapt a movie or a TV show into such smaller increments of time, it still doesn't work. So it's just, this lives on this platform for this type of audience or for this type of watching experience. Whether you're at home on the couch, I'm not going to be wanting to watch 1-minute videos when I'm at home on the couch, because I don't want to actually have to look through and pick which one each minute. That's so much work. I'd rather just put something that's like a 40-minute episode of a TV show, and then I don't have to think for the next 40 minutes, what am I going to watch next? But again, it's different demographics, right? I think it's a good sign, though, that something like Quibi didn't work for smaller content creators or filmmakers. Again, they live all in the same space, right? Like you can have someone that's a YouTuber that is dabbling into film, but they're still a content creator. So they're, one time they're wearing one hat, one time they're wearing another hat. But the fact that something like Quibi didn't work is actually a good sign, because that means that these storytelling structures are still useful in their own way.
Yep. So what do you think of the future of independent cinema? Before you answer, there's just one thing I want to say. There are lots of platforms out there. They're open to independent filmmaking, but at the same time, a lot of the bigger platforms, because I've been on many, many platforms, they're also closing their doors. Then there's certain new platforms that are coming in. They want independent films, but they don't have the reach, and they don't do any marketing. And no product is good without marketing. If people don't know about it, then the product is useless. And it could be anything, not just a film.
Yeah, music, art, whatever.
Anything. It could be a restaurant in somewhere, and if people don't know there's a restaurant there, like no one's gonna go there.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have a certain amount of reach.
So with all these issues, what do you think? How do you think the independent filmmaking future looks like?
I think it's actually pretty. I think there's a lot of hope. I think there should be, even now more so with something like COVID, because people have been just consuming so much more. Whether it is because you're in a lockdown in your region and you actually can't physically go to work, or if you're working from home and you just have like 2 additional hours in the day or whatever it is that you would normally spend commuting, that opens things up. And I think even like looking at big theaters, big cinema companies that haven't been open for the last however long,
Mhm.
and movies that haven't been released because those cinemas aren't open, forcing them to put their stuff on streaming. So I think HBO is a perfect example. Warner Brothers more so, forcing their movies to go on HBO Max directly without, they're competing with themselves because their movies are now in theater too, but they're also releasing them online for any of the subscribers for those platforms. Disney might be a little bit of a different story because they sometimes charge a premium for like a movie like Black Widow, for example, that came out this year.
Disney's about
I
to
think
flip the
more than
market.
it's changing everything, right?
It
Like
is.
Disney is all
We
movies
have
that I
no
like
faith in
aside.
Disney. It
Oh,
won't
absolutely
accept
not.
us.
No, yeah, and there's only so much storytelling you can do in a Disney film anyway, because they have to be kid friendly. They don't have rated R movies, which is fine. It's fair. It's parents that have their kids, at least they're going to have something to watch that they're not going to be wanting to rip their hair out with like some really crappy child's TV show. At least they can throw on Disney Plus and have like all of the movies that they grew up with. But personally, I think that with all of these new streaming services, there's services that people might not even be aware of. Like you said, they don't really um, do a lot of like mainstream advertising, but things like Plex, for example, is open to anyone. Basically, can upload their movies, or even
My
more
films are
like
on Plex.
niche. Yeah, exactly. That's a quick plug right there. But more niche than that, there's services like Curiosity Stream, which is for documentaries. There's services like Nebula, which is partnered with Curiosity Stream.
Mhm.
Anyone that's listening to this, if you've ever watched any YouTube, you probably hear them plugged from some YouTubers, because it's a platform that was created by some of the biggest YouTubers for some of their more long form content. Um, whether
Sorry,
it's something that's,
one correction here. For Plex, you have to go through a distributor.
oh, really? You can't just do it as an individual?
No,
Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was, so it's not quite open like YouTube is.
no.
That's interesting.
You need someone to get your film in there.
Alternative streaming services out there that will allow you to, whether you have to jump through a few hoops or not, will allow you to upload your content. They won't advertise for you, that's for sure. You still have to do a lot of that groundwork, but that would be the case even if you're in the big leagues, when you're playing against the Disneys or the Warner Brothers or Paramount of the world. You're still going to have to advertise no matter what.
Mhm.
But I do think the internet has, just like everything else, the internet has opened up the competitive factor for the quote unquote little guys, right? Like
See, there's one thing which young filmmakers or first-time filmmakers, if they're hearing this, is that it is very important to have your film on as many platforms as possible. And I know a lot of people would say, oh, they want their film on Netflix. Trust me, it's not worth the time and money to only go for Netflix. Try Netflix, but whoever's picking up your film, give it to them. Let it release on the platforms. You can do the research online. You will see the top 20 big platforms. Put your
mhm,
film there. If Netflix, by chance, it's very unlikely Netflix is going to pick up your film
mhm.
as an independent filmmaker. Even if it does, and it's a new released film, it's not going to be in the new release section. It's going to be somewhere in their catalog at the back, and it's
Yeah,
going to take you a while to find your own film. So just go for every platform. There are a lot of platforms where once your film is there, you earn money through advertising and different things. Uh, just do your research and don't pick one platform. It's very important to be on as many platforms as possible.
Yeah, you can kind of have a big reach by like,
Yeah.
spreading it out a little bit.
If you're
Um,
an A-list celebrity, they have exclusive rights. Independent filmmakers don't have exclusive rights. So don't compare yourself with the Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie.
you shouldn't be doing that as a general statement because they are fucking gorgeous people. So
I have talked to a lot of young filmmakers and their expectations are ridiculous. They want to shoot their
yeah,
first film on a red camera. They want their first film to release on Netflix, and just they want a full crew of like 100 people. I'm like, you're dreaming.
yeah. No,
It's
there's
time to
there's
get
you got
there.
to have some like realistic expectations. Um, if you're just getting your feet wet and you're
Mhm.
expecting, to have like big distribution companies calling you for, that's not how the business works. And more than likely, if you have that attitude, you're not going to survive
Yep.
because you're going to have these illusions of grandeur and you're going to have expectations of people being like, oh, I love your work, out of nowhere. It's not really how it works.
Also, a quick thing I would like to add because in 2020, for rest of the world, 2020 was a bad year, but for me, 2020 was a great year.
That's crazy.
In
That's
2020,
hilarious.
finally, I was recognized as a filmmaker. And
Yeah, that's huge.
yeah, and the thing was, when my film was, I had two films pretty much at the same time in the festival circuit, and one was winning everywhere, everything. And when my film was winning awards, I was getting a lot of emails from distributors,
Interesting.
literally on daily basis. I was getting emails. So you have to be super careful when you get those emails. Don't just read the email, be excited that your film is going to be on this big platform, it's going to release
Yeah.
right away, and the whole world's going to see. And also for independent filmmakers, unless a big major platform, everyone knows the top 5 platforms,
Yeah.
they're offering you exclusive rights, which is very unlikely to happen with independent filmmakers. If they are offering, we all know the top 5 platforms,
Mhm.
then wonderful, awesome, go for it. If it's an unknown distributor or a new platform and they're saying they want exclusive rights, no.
No. There's no reason to go exclusive unless it's something huge, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Remember,
because then you're basically saying, oh, we don't want you competing against us
yeah,
on any other platform,
yeah,
which really puts you in a situation where you're locked into just one. You have all of your eggs in one basket, and more than likely, they're not. While they want to have you exclusive, they're not going to put you on the front page, right? Like it's
exactly,
those algorithms in the background are going to favor only the really big stuff.
exactly. And also, uh, like when you get those emails, ask questions.
Yeah,
When you start talking to these people, you will know better. You'll have a better idea of how things work. And if you're not getting answers, that's a big red
let
flag.
it go. Yeah, walk away.
Yeah,
If you're talking to someone that's not even going to give you the time of day, it's not worth working for them. If that's what they're showing you on the upfront, imagine what it's going to be like afterwards.
hmm, yeah. But also one thing, don't look down on YouTube. I
I
know a
don't.
lot of
I
no, no,
love
I'm not you.
YouTube. Yeah, yeah.
This
No,
was
generally.
yeah,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
general, because a lot of people look down on YouTube. They think it's just a platform for kids. Yeah, it takes time to monetize your channel. It takes a lot of work. It's just that the world is on YouTube. It's not just
100%.
video streaming or film streaming platform. It's a search engine.
Yeah.
You get all.
It's, you know, how many people just look for DIY things on
Yeah.
YouTube, you know, and a lot of those channels, they'll only get random hits. They don't have like a subscriber base that are following every single do-it-yourself video that they release. But if there's like an influx of, oh, how do I print on a Cricut machine, print a vinyl, for example, then if Cricut has like a huge sale, then you'll see a boost in your viewership. But if you have like a very specific niche audience, for example, YouTube kind of subsect of YouTube sphere that I particularly follow a lot is stand-up comedy. And more in the last 5-10 years, there's been entire comedy specials that were released on YouTube because Netflix didn't want to pick them up, because HBO didn't want to have them as a comedy special, and they do really well. And then that creator, or that comedian in this case, gets on the map, so to speak, right? So now they have more influence and more power, and they can actually speak with Netflix directly and say, look, you didn't want my stuff initially. I released it on YouTube for free. Well, for free. They're making money out of it. And it did really well. You know, it has X amount of views. It has this kind of reach you can have like, oh, I did really well in Europe. I did really well in North America. And you can actually show the numbers to back it up. And then they kind of have to negotiate with you, right? So you basically force their hand by being a presence on a platform as big as YouTube, where you can't argue against that. You can't argue against someone like PewDiePie having such a huge reach. You could say, oh, it doesn't matter. Sure. But like, the fact of the matter is, there are YouTubers that are getting more attention, more eyeballs on the screen than something like Fox News. And
Because you
that
don't
doesn't
like something doesn't mean others are not going to like it
exactly.
as well.
And it's usually the older, you know, the older audiences that skew towards the traditional media, whether it's Fox or NBC, ABC, you know, those typical channels. I get most of my news from YouTubers that I follow. Maybe not YouTuber like individuals, but YouTube channels, whether it's like Vice or even smaller guys like Internet Today, like whatever it is. I put a vested interest in them. I have some sort of trust into them of what they're going to tell me is, you know, at least somewhat factual. And I know that their interest isn't with some big corporate company like Viacom or something like that. So I can say, hey, they don't have any politicians in their pockets trying to make them do certain things, or in the film industry, they don't have big executives telling them that they need to do this. So they have a lot more flexibility, and that's what I skew towards, is that let the creators create, and that's what I want to watch. I don't want to watch something that some executive in some office said, oh, maybe this would be a good idea, because more than likely it's not.
Like you mentioned, how you watch Vice. I remember, interestingly, just took me back in time 10 years ago when we used to hang out when the whole content creation thing wasn't big.
Yeah,
We would sit and watch Vice, and we would watch documentaries on YouTube.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like regularly. That really hasn't changed for me all that much, but I think they have a lot of a bigger audience now, right? And it's not just Vice, but all these like similar channels where they have actual journalists that are in the hotspots. Like, you know, they have journalists in uh, Afghanistan, for example. They have journalists in other third world countries like the United States, where they're actually on the ground.
My classmate, actually, from film school, he's doing it in Turkey.
There you go. Well, perfect example, right? Like, and I'm more likely to trust them than I am to trust CNN or Fox News.
It's not about that. Let's not
It's
go
but it's just
there.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, I know.
you develop a relationship with the ones that you frequent more.
Yeah.
So I'm more likely to trust them because I've been following them for so long.
Hmm.
And more often than not, they give me the facts
Hmm.
without giving me any sort of like alternative version of reality because it suits their corporate, you know, overlords, whether it's Viacom in a lot of senses, or it could be AT&T. Like, these are companies that own TV channels. These are companies that own news networks, and they have obvious interests so that you don't get exactly what the actual reality of it is.
I
That's
think,
only in the news. That's one world, right? Like,
yeah.
we can talk about like sports. We can talk about, there's so many different niche groups of YouTube. There's parts of YouTube I don't even know exist. I didn't know what ASMR was until very recently.
Yeah,
Why?
same.
Because it doesn't interest me. Yeah,
I
it's
was
this,
wondering. I saw that. I
but
was
it's
like,
huge.
yeah.
It's huge. It's crazy how big it is. Or like children that are reviewing toys and they're opening and unboxing toys. I don't know why anyone would spend that much time on these videos aside from kids. Obviously, I can understand kids wanting to watch other kids, whatever. But there are kids that are making millions of dollars and they're basically no names, but they're successful. You
Hey
can't
man,
argue with their
this
success.
big kid here also did that. I was approached by a few camera companies, Chinese companies, and on the
For
YouTube channel,
unboxing.
unboxing and reviewing. I was
So those are big,
it's a huge
big people
market.
toys, right? Like
Big
just
people toys,
cameras and stuff like that. Yeah.
filmmaker toys,
So, of course, yeah. And there's other YouTubers like Marcus Brownlee. He's made his entire existence because
empire.
he's
That's
a
a
big techie. He's
yeah.
huge. And you
They're
say
very
that to someone
Teslas.
that doesn't watch YouTube. Exactly. And then, like, they get paid and they get free stuff to just review it. That's the dream right there. Like, that's perfect example of
I got three.
you force them.
Hey,
That's awesome.
any companies listening? I've done three, so I think I've graduated. Please send more stuff.
Make it exponential. Give him 9.
Canon, Sony, Blackmagic, Red Ari. If you guys are hearing,
Name
I
drop
will,
all of them.
just send me the products. I don't want the money.
The products are good enough.
But it's interesting actually because sorry, this was not part of the plan I had over here. But you brought up documentary. I have a advice, and you can back me up here a little as well.
Mhm.
Uh, I've made one documentary, and I'm kind of in the planning stages of making a second one right now. Uh, I have a couple of meetings next week actually for that. But I do recommend all filmmakers, also young filmmakers, especially if you want to make your first film, try making a documentary. I said this in a previous podcast with Kenny as well. I don't think I learned so much from any film as much as I learned when I made my documentary.
Yeah.
Because with the first couple of films, I got a little more experimental with the second one. With the first one, I was following the rules, or at least I was trying to follow the filmmaking rules. There's only one rule in filmmaking, there is no rule. And when you make a documentary, you learn that you don't need to follow a set aspect ratio. You don't need to have the same colors matching up. Yeah,
Mhm.
with narrative film, you do have to match the colors and all. You can play
For
with
sure.
it depending on past, present, however your story is structured. But with documentary, you have so much freedom because you're getting a lot of raw stock, you're getting
Yeah.
footage from here and there. So you have to
Old
cut it together.
footage. Yeah.
So you get to learn, you get to play and learn. And then later, when you're going to make your narrative film, your feature film or short film, whatever, you'll be a lot more laid back. You won't be thinking so much because you have learned a few things here and there. And with documentaries, you can make mistakes and make them look like they're not mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. Intentional mistakes. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And you not just learn about like the filmmaking process, but whatever it is that the documentary is about, you're going to learn so much more than you ever intended to.
and with documentaries, another thing is that you cannot go off topic,
Yeah.
which is also very good practice for your future script
For
writing.
having focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have a vision. Because as soon as you deviate from that, then you're going to find yourself in an entirely different
Mhm.
type of documentary. You're going to find yourself like, kind of like a flat earther. You're going to have no logic, no sense, and you're going to just go on different tangents all over the place with all kinds of different like weird conspiracy theories.
Mhm. I guess we're about to wrap up. So before we go, what are your last words?
Just a couple thoughts to kind of wrap up my maybe scatterbrained thoughts that I've shared with you on this podcast. Um, the main thing that I was saying about like efficient story writing or efficient storytelling, a perfect example, one of maybe the best TV shows to do it, which is going to go back to what we said about comedy writing being so difficult. If you go back and watch like the first season of Arrested Development and you actually look at it, like they have parts of episode 1 that seem like a loose end, but they're actually realized by like episode 6. So if you're looking for something that's efficient story writing and is something very hard to write, like a comedy, it's not like, oh, it's the best TV show of all time. Obviously not. But as far as like being efficient with what you're doing with your time on the screen and the people that you're working with, the actors that are really amazing on that show, they don't waste any scene. Everything that they put on screen is at one point, even if it's not in that episode, at one point they fulfill it and they close the loop. They wrap it up nicely in a bow, and it makes it really rewarding when you're watching it from front to back. Obviously, this is even before binging was a thing. So if you're watching it like how people used to watch TV normally, like, oh, every Wednesday at 9 p.m. this show comes out, and you watch it religiously and you're week to week, you get rewarded. And now if you watch it all back to back and you're binge watching it, you're like, oh wait, that's from the first episode where they had this thing. Really, really well done, super efficient, hilarious show, joke after joke. Just one of the probably most efficient screenwriting that you could see. Another show that does it really well is Schitt's Creek, but that's it's a little bit of a Canadian TV show plug.
So, any plans of writing a course or a short book about just writing in general? Because, uh, again, before we move forward, Alvaro is not a filmmaker, but his sense of scripts, writing is bang on. It's really good. And
Humbled.
also, sorry, because I was recently telling someone about this thing. It just occurred to me, although I think this should have came earlier. I don't know if you remember this, around 2010, 11, when I was in film school. I shot a home film, and you were my voice for that film.
I do remember doing some voiceover work with you. Yeah, I don't think I ended up seeing like the final product. But
I
I
did
definitely
see the final
remember.
product. Uh, I won't get into what happened. Let's just say back
Fair
then,
enough.
I could not afford hard drives and
Oh, you
storage
lost it.
space.
Oh
So
no.
a significant chunk got, well, computer crashing and
Mm-hmm.
things happening. So getting lost, then I scrapped the whole thing. But actually, my first film, this was my voice, what you're hearing on the other end. It was
Well,
this,
I'm
my
pretty
face and that
flattered,
voice.
which is probably the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think so.
I would take your face, but I would also take my voice.
I would do the same. Hey,
Thank you.
we've known each
That's
other
very
for a
nice of
long
you.
time, so we can say things to each other.
It's crazy how long we've known each other. I feel so old sometimes. But yeah, I don't think I have any sort of aspirations of uh, from my limited experience to teach other people how to write. I think that just the I think I would probably be better as an editor than as a writer, to be honest.
Mm,
But like not editing like the final cut, but editing the script.
yeah,
Um, like
I think I
that's
agree on that. I can see that.
yeah.
But
Like I have creative juices as well, but I don't think I can. I'm not the type of person that can just like create something entirely from scratch.
mm,
I can work off of what other people have started, and then maybe hopefully improve it, and cut out some of the stuff that's not necessary. I think that's where my main strength comes from. And when I'm watching something on like movies or TV or whatever, and I see some filler that shouldn't be there, it bothers me. And it actually bothers me to the point where I'm like, why am I even watching this anymore if they don't even give a shit?
yeah. True. But hey, uh, in the next year or two, hopefully, I will force you to make your acting debut in one of my films.
I'm looking forward to it. Um, I haven't acted in a while. I definitely did dabble into acting in my younger years, but it's something that has always been something that like, whether it's doing impressions to make friends laugh or uh, like just pretending to be
I
someone I'm not
remember a
on
few.
Halloween. Oh
I
yeah,
remember a few, but I won't
there's a
mention
few.
them.
I won't be doing any voices today. But like even just dressing up on Halloween is one of my favorite things to do, and it's just it all goes back to that, like becoming another person, filling in a character role, and getting to explore a different version of yourself, or getting to explore something that is entirely outside of yourself. It's pretty
I don't
fantastic.
I don't know why I'm thinking of 2011 Halloween. I won't mention what you were dressed up as, what you were
Right.
being, but I don't know why
Mm-hmm.
that just clicked in my head.
Well, I was in my persona, and anyone that has any sort of criticism to say, I'll take it as as a as a compliment of someone trying to assist me in my growth.
Okay, cool. Sorry. I'm picturing that year right now in my head.
That was a long time ago. I can imagine which one it might have been, but my memory's not
No.
as strong. Okay, yeah, that's the one I thought. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. There's
For
been
some
some
reason, I
really
remember the
crazy
year
ones.
as well, clearly.
You're younger than I am, so
Yeah,
you're a
only
lot
a
more
year.
still.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. But before we go, just a quick note for all filmmakers. Uh, yeah, work on your scripts. No need to rush to make a film. Make sure your script is good. Uh, and be satisfied with your script. Don't just go
Yeah,
with a half-baked product, uh, because the final product's also going to be half-baked, most likely if
yeah,
your script is. If you feel midway through filming things are not going the way they're supposed to go, stop, pause. I have made that mistake in the past. I repeatedly said that I made a series which I should have stopped midway, but I didn't, and the final product wasn't good. So it's best to stop. Try to promote your film as much as possible on social media. And remember, when you make a film, it is very, very important, no matter what platform your film's on. Could be Netflix, Amazon, HBO, Hulu, Mubi, Tubi, Plex, etc.
maybe not anymore.
Whichever platform. Your film's there, but right next to you, it's quite possible. There's a DiCaprio film. There's Angelina Jolie film. So make a film that actually looks good, sounds good, performances are good. Because maybe in the real world, we're not competing with them, but on the platforms, you are to some extent.
Yeah,
Because I have multiple films online on these platforms. And in the search, you can see the people that are next to me. Maybe people don't click as much as on my film as much as they do there. They definitely
yeah,
don't. Clearly, I get the sales reports and I don't see that. But you have to make a film which, once someone clicks on it, they don't walk out unhappy, or they stay there, they stick to it, because right next to your film, right next to your poster, there's another poster for people to watch. So go out and make a good film. Don't worry about the equipment and take your time establishing it.
Be
And
happy with it.
yeah, be happy with it. And if it goes wrong, it's okay to say it went wrong.
Learn from it.
Yeah, learn from it. But yeah, thank you, Alvaro, for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.